Graham Plattner still has not formally dropped out of Maine's Senate race, despite posting this video on social media on Wednesday, in which he said he suspended his campaign. The Democratic nominee has not, at least as of this moment, filed the necessary paperwork to withdraw. Now, new reporting from Axios reveals Plattner privately told his staff he plans to officially leave the race on Monday. That's the very last day for him to do so and still meet the state law deadline. If Plattner does not formally file the paperwork to end his campaign by Monday, well, his name will appear on the November general election ballot. But the Maine Democratic Party is moving forward with finding his replacement, saying it will hold a nominating convention with roughly 600 participants, 100 state committee members, and 500 delegates selected by county parties. Joining us now, the host of Politics Nation on MS Now, the Reverend Al Sharpton. He is the president of the National Action Network, co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leader, and senior writer at The Dispatch and columnist at Bloomberg Opinion, David Drucker. David is in Iowa. We're going to turn to him in a minute for a very interesting race there. But let's start with Maine. Lauren, to you first. We have every reason to believe that Plattner will still drop out on Monday. But what's clear is a mess has been left. And it's a state that, has been reliably blue for a number of cycles now. But Susan Collins managed to survive. What is your sense here as to what the Dems need to do? What kind of candidate they need to pick to have a shot to win?
Well, it is incredibly complicated, and I've said here before, Susan Collins, as much as Democrats want to beat her, has been a very, very strong candidate for cycle after cycle. She has been very difficult to beat because she knows the state very well, and she's generally represented it well. I think the issue now is that whoever they get is going to have a level of scrutiny that is off the charts, as should have happened with Plattner. And it's incredibly difficult to catch up. They have a very short frame.
So, Lauren, you have a piece for Notice that just posted about this race and what you think some of the conclusions have been reached incorrectly. Tell us about it.
Well, so look, everyone and their cousin in the last few days has had an opinion on the Plattner race, suddenly saying that they thought all along he shouldn't have been in the race. I mean, it's just like so little too late. And one of the takes that I have not seen anywhere was really my experience, which is that here on the show and then in my own social media, I called on Plattner to drop out over a month ago. And when I did, I was hit with a barrage of absolutely virulent anti-Semitism. I was accused of being a shill for Israel. I was told that I must be in the pocket of AIPAC and that was the only reason why I opposed Plattner. He had a deep bench of ultra-lefty supporters who believed that this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Israel and Jews to defame him, rather than looking at the very plain evidence that he had some really serious character issues. And those were the things that I called out. And the reason why I think this is important to highlight is because Plattner himself, in his sort of very defensive video the other day, is continuing to blame this sort of idea of there's a vast conspiracy to take him out, rather than taking responsibility for his behavior. And that is what I saw from his supporters. The level of hate, the very specific hate that accused me of being in the pocket of Israel because I thought someone who was abusive to women and had a Nazi tattoo on his chest wasn't appropriate for the United States Senate, was shocking to me.
Well, certainly unacceptable anti-Semitism in any way. The new piece is available on Notice now, but you're right. I mean, Israel is going to be a flashpoint for this election, both for the Democratic primaries and also for the general in November. So, Rev, let's set that aside for the moment and talk about, Plattner did have an appeal for all of his flaws, and there were clearly many. He did electrify sort of grassroots voters, progressives and the like. He garnered real enthusiasm. And part of what Democrats in Maine are going to have to do now is try to, whoever their candidates end up being, try to still connect with those voters who were excited, some for the first time, excited to vote for Plattner.
We should not ignore that he had an appeal on issues that resonated. We should not appeal that even when some of the early negative things came out about him, people stuck with him anyway. But he inevitably had to withdraw based on what kept coming. Let's not forget some of his major supporters, Bernie Sanders and others, called on him to withdraw. So it had nothing to do with the fact that people had foresight and said earlier. What I would look for, though, is whoever the Democrats choose to run. I ran for president once. What I would say is, fine, we asked our guy to step aside, but you have a sitting president convicted of sexual harassment. And this week, it was ordered to pay $5 million to a victim. Yep. So we showed more of a standard than you have. You want to really have this debate? I would turn it back on the Republicans. We act like we do not have a glaring example of somebody that was accused of sexual misbehavior and was found to be guilty by a jury in a court. That is what they ought to be running against Susan Collins. Are you denouncing Donald Trump like we made Platinum step aside?
Yeah, Trump found liable this week, still saying he'll appeal that $5 million award to E. Jean Carroll.